Hey, how's it going, everybody? I hope you're doing well today. This video is going to cover two things. We're going to do a tutorial on the free web app GrooveScribe, and then the second part's going to be on transcribing drum beats by ear, and we're going to use GrooveScribe to do that. So we'll kind of start getting familiar with what GrooveScribe is if you've never heard of it, learning the features of it and stuff, and then we'll maybe make a beat in there real quick just to show you how it all works, and then we'll get into transcribing by ear. First things first, what is GrooveScribe? It's a free web app. It's essentially a drum notation software mixed with like a drum machine or a drum sequencer, and it's just really easy to use. It's free. It was put out by the drummer Mike Johnston in conjunction with a web programmer Lou Montulli, actually in 2015. So it's been out for a while, but I still think there's a lot of drummers that have maybe never heard of it or don't really know all the features and stuff. So hopefully today we'll kind of clear all that stuff up. So let's just take a look here. So basically all you have to do to access this is type in GrooveScribe right here. Just type that in your search engine, and then it should be the first thing that pops up. So click that. It's going to pull it up. Look, it's going to look just like this. This is kind of the stock way it pulls up, just with a 16th note hi-hat pattern basic beat. And so let's just hit play here so we can hear how this sounds. And you may have noticed there was a little glitch there the first time it plays through. That's just one little glitch that I've noticed that happens with GrooveScribe sometimes. Just the first time it plays through, it will kind of glitch out, and then after that, it should loop pretty smooth. For the most part, it is a free program, so you kind of get what you get. But overall, it's, as you'll see, it's still a super useful tool to use as a drummer, whether you're a student or a teacher. So let's get into some of the features here. So as you can see, I'm going to go starting on the left side here. We're just kind of go top down. So right here is obviously the time signature. So I can change the time signature. That gives you a bunch of options in here. We're just going to stay on 4/4 today, but if you wanted to get into any odd time stuff, you can do that in here. Then you just have the different subdivisions coming down here. So as you can see, if I click the 8th notes here, now it just switched to an 8th note grid, and now it's just an 8th note rock beat. If I go back to 16th notes, it keeps it with that beat, still with the 8th notes, but as you can see here, this is where you would basically click parts of the beat on and off. So I could click there, and as you can see, it just filled in that hi-hat here and wrote in one E-and. I could take the E out, and so this is how you basically write the beat, is just whatever you click down here, it's going to put it in up above. And so, yeah, back to this side, this is just like the grid it's going to lay out for you. So it's an 8th note grid, 16th note grid, 32nd notes, 8th note triplets, 16th note triplets, and then it does give you a mixed subdivision grid. And this one will allow you to do, like, if you had a beat that had a mix of like 16th notes, and then it has like one beat where it's 8th note triplets or 16th note triplets, you can mix them together. There are some limitations. You're not going to be able to do everything in this program that you may want to do, but for the most part, it's going to cover a ton of beats that are, especially if you're a newer drummer or a teacher using this, it's going to cover a ton of stuff. So, even though it has some limitations, it has a ton it can do as well. And then this bottom button down here, what this basically does is switch the view mode. So it's just going to hide the sequencer part down here that you plug in all the notes here. So if I click that, that goes away, and you just see the top part of the notation and the staff. And then the very bottom is just undo. If you're on a tablet, there'll be one other thing that says advanced. I think it says advanced features, and you can basically click that, and what that does is like the equivalent of what would happen on the computer when you right click. So it just gives you more options, which I'll show you here in a minute. So moving to the top up here, it has a metronome built in, and it actually has some great features here. So like, let's go back to I'll hide the this first. Or actually, let me pull back up just the 16th note beat here. We'll hide that. We'll hit play again. Probably hear this glitch. Yep. Now it should be good. And then if I wanted to put the click on, just like a standard chord note click, I can just click 4th up here for quarters. And on the next bar, it's going to put it in. I could do 8th notes, 16ths. And then this part is one of my favorite features, honestly. If you come to options here, I'm going to put it back to a quarter first, actually. If you come to options, you can solo the click. This is great if you're, learning how to sight read and you want to practice, like, just sight reading this beat without actually hearing the drum beat. You can do that. You can still see it. It's still giving you that little red playhead going across to show you where you are. But now you can't hear the drum beat, but you can still hear the click. So you're kind of playing in time with it there. So that's a nice feature. It also has an auto speed up, so you can adjust how much you want it to increase in BPM per minute. So you could say like I want it to jump by 1 BPM every minute, or you can make big jumps. Say I want it to jump 10 BPM beats per minute every minute, or whatever you want it to do. You can set this up to 20 minutes. So that's a nice little feature there. And then there's a count in, and you can see that it has a check mark now across next to these. So if I wanted to, take the auto speed up off, I could just click that again, and then that should go away. I could click the solo off. That will go away now. And then probably the coolest feature of the metronome on here is the offset click. So basically what this does is it will cycle through like each part of the subdivision. So since we're on 16th notes, it's going to cycle through 1, E, and and that will do that if you rotate through down here. But if you wanted to just hear the click on the E's and have it stay on the E's, you could click this. So watch this. It's going to switch to the E's. And then I could switch it here to like say the Uz. And then I'll show you here if I wanted to rotate through. E's, ands, Uz. And that's going to go back to the downbeats. And it'll just keep cycling through like that until you turn it off. But it's a really cool feature because sometimes, I've done this with a metronome in the past, for kind of a standard metronome, and let me pause it for a second. You can do that with any clicks, I suppose. You could just basically start hearing the click in a different spot and sort of do that on your own. But it's really great that this does this as like a feature built into it. It's a super useful tool to really get more control of like your time and focus on like playing in time to a click that's on the E's, ands, and Uz. Or if you're in triplets, it'll go like 1 to the trip to the let. So that's a really great feature there. Then moving over to the side here, and let me just make sure I got this off now. I'm going to click that off, make sure that's, let's see here, start on 1. I think I want that. There we go. So permutations, I'll show you that one real quick actually. So this is a cool feature where, if you're not familiar with permutations, it's basically like all the possibilities. So if you had like, first possibility, and then like that could be like beat 1, and then the E's, and then the ands, and then the Us. Kind of like the click was just doing, it was cycling through each possibility. That's essentially what permutations are in a way. It's like you're basically doing all the possibilities. So this has a built-in way to do this. So let's just do it with an 8th note rock beat. And if I click permutations, you can see it says none, kick permutation, or snare permutation. If I go to kicks, it's going to pull this up, and it gives you some options up here. You can click some of these on or off if you want to do all of them. And essentially, you'll see here, it's going to play through. You can see it's got the kicks on the downbeats, and then the kicks moved over to the E's, then to the ands, then to the Us, and then it goes through doing groups of 2s like that. So 1 E, 2 E, 3 E, 4 E, over to E and moving over like that. Then it goes to the down and up beats if you want to have that. I click that on up here, and you can click any of these on or off if you want to. And then also, gets in the triples and quads. So I'll kind of show you how this works. I'll let it play through for a second. And let me just start it over so the playhead lines up. Kind of see how that essentially makes a nice little exercise for you that you can play along with. That's just like 2 clicks, couple clicks, and you're good to go. And it would do the same thing for snares as well. So if I did this, now it's gonna moving through like that with the snare. So that's what the permutations tab is up here. Grooves, it basically has some pre-made grooves you can pull up. It's got like, some classic different beats in here, like stuff like Purdy Shuffle. And you could do, the cool thing is any drum beat that you put into this, or that you if you use one of the pre-made grooves, or if your teacher sends you one or you make one, you can do the permutations with any drum beat. So which is a awesome exercise. It's super hard to play a lot of drum beats where you're permutating the kick or snare while you're playing it without stopping. So you can see on this Purdy shuffle, it gets pretty complex. So you don't have to do that, obviously, but that's like, a feature you could do. So I'm going to turn this off. And if I just played the regular Purdy shuffle in here, that is part of the stock grooves, it's this. And there's basically some other pre-made beats in here, like in some foot ostinatos, a few world grooves. Not a ton in here, but just a few to get started. Then it has a help tab, kind of. If you can click this, it takes you to a page that explains some of the stuff that hopefully I'm going to cover for you today. And then moving down here, obviously that's play. You've seen that. This BPM slider, it says 120. That's the tempo we're at right now. Let me just go back to like an 8th note groove here. You can slide this around. So this is great if you're learning a drum beat and let's say it's too hard for you to play. You could say, okay, I'm going to slow it way down to maybe 60 BPM. And another cool feature that I'll get into here in a second is basically so you can swing it out here. So sorry, I gotta wrap my brain around where I'm going next. So basically, yeah, you can swing stuff out here. So if I wanted to put some swing to this, you can adjust that, and I'll just speed this up a little bit. I could put like a little bit of swing on this. So it does allow you to put some swing in there, and then moving down here, basically, so one quick thing again about if you're learning a drum beat and you slowed it down, you can click stickings down here, right here, and basically this allows you, if you can click them on or off right here. I can, right, left, both hands, or the count. If I click it again, it goes back to that. You can also right click for a drop down menu, but you can also just click stickings right here, which remember I got to that by just clicking stickings right down here. That pulls that up. Click stickings, and you can do I could just do alternate, right, left, it just fills it in for you, all rights, or the counts. So that's a great feature if you're kind of just starting this out and starting to learn how to sight read. You can see the count above stuff, which is super helpful. And then another thing that I wanted to mention is, you can mute any limb. So like, let's say you're learning this beat and you're just having trouble with like the kick pattern. I could just go like this and say, I want to mute hi-hat sound, and you'll see that's muted by this little emblem right here. I can mute the snare, and now when I hit play, I'm just going to hear the kick. And I could have the click in there still, which would probably be helpful for something like this since it's so slow. And that way you can kind of iron out that part, basically practice just that kick pattern, or you could do the same, mute the kick, unmute these. I think you just click that off right there. So then now you just be hearing your hands. So just a super useful tool to learn. I use this to this day to learn like any complex beats I might be trying to learn. I'll plug it in here, and then I can slow it way down. I can do all the stuff I'm showing you right now. So it doesn't really matter your skill level. If you're just starting out, if you're intermediate, advanced, like you can definitely find a use for this program. It's great. So moving on to some of these other features. So basically, yeah, we just covered the stickings and kind of what that is. And, for my students, a lot of times I'll put in the actual sticking, which can be very helpful for certain drum beats and fills and stuff, so you can fill that in. So I'll click that off for now. And then, so down here, if you hit clear all, you can probably guess what that does. It's just going to clear, kind of give you a blank template. And if you didn't want to, if you didn't mean to do that, you can just hit undo over here. It'll pull it back up. Toms here is going to add to the grid right here a high tom, so a rack tom, and then a floor tom. So those two right there, and you can click those, and they'll just fill them in like anything else here. And if you're not using toms in the groove, you can just click those off. It is a little limited. I do wish they had like a second rack tom, but what can you do? It's a free web program. And then the sticking, we already covered that. MIDI, this is a really cool feature for the MIDI one. If for anybody that's maybe already using a DAW, such as like GarageBand, Logic, Pro Tools, Ableton Live, any of those or any other ones, essentially what this allows you to do is if you made a drum beat in here, or let's say you want to, let's say I want to put in, a bossa nova, and maybe whether you made this beat or it's something you pulled up or whatever it is, if you want to export it and be able to put that MIDI data into your drum software, like your DAW, you just hit this MIDI button right here. You could save it, title it whatever you want. I could say Bossa MIDI. And then essentially that is going to save that file. And let me just show you how this would work here. So basically, one thing I noticed with this is it saves it as a .midi file. So as you can see here, it's bossamidi.midi. And I think that file extension works like in, I believe, GarageBand and Logic. It just depends on your DAW. Like, for instance, in Ableton Live, if you try to drag that into a MIDI track, it won't register and it won't let you pull it in. It has to be .mid. So take off the last I, just do .mid, and then it'll just go into your DAW just fine like that. So you may have to do that. But once you put it into your DAW, essentially then you can see, it's just like having on the MIDI notes on a piano roll. So you can edit it. I'll kind of show you what I mean if you've never seen this. So this is a beat in here that's a MIDI drum beat. And so it would basically pull it up like this, where I can see like this right here would be like the hi-hat going across. And then this would be the snare drum, kick drum. And then you can basically further edit it. You can change the sounds. You can do whatever you want to do. So it just gives you, like, if you made a beat that you really liked in GrooveScribe and you want to, further develop it, because there are some limitations on GrooveScribe. You can't really change the dynamics too much, and you're kind of set to the one types of sounds and stuff. You could basically import that pretty easily right into your DAW and then kind of go to town on it, whatever you want to do to it. So that's a really cool feature. And then the print is if you wanted to print this out for yourself or maybe a student, or if you're, whatever you need to do. If you'd rather have this printed out on paper to sight read it, like kind of go back to the old school way, you could do that. It'll just basically print it out like this, and you can print it from there. And then the share feature, the last one down here, this is if you want to share it with, a friend or student or whatever it might be. You can basically just click this short URL. And so instead of having this really long URL up here, it will pop up stock like this short URL. So it's just a shorter link, and that's going to take you right to this page. You could also embed it if you want to like put it on your website or on Facebook or something like that. And then I think it gives you options down here to share straight to Twitter, Facebook, Reddit, and stuff like that. So, super easy, kind of just click, plug and play, kind of just really easy to use software here. And then, so let's see, we covered the left side going down here. We covered all this. One other little feature that's kind of hiding here is this key. So that will just show you, it's basically a drum key, or also sometimes called a legend, that you might see in like the beginning of a drum book or in drum magazines and stuff like that. And it just shows you how they're notating stuff, because, unfortunately there's some variations in drum notation, as we all know, anybody that's into this and been doing it for a while. Some people put like, the hi-hat on, like just resting on the top line of the staff. Some people put it where the line goes through the middle part of the note. And so there's some kind of little variations there. So if you're wondering what they do for GrooveScribe specifically, you can just click this key and see exactly what stuff is, even though it's kind of self-explanatory anyway, because it's kind of showing you down here. But just so you know, that is a little thing you can click here. And then other things in here that I didn't cover yet is like the title. So if let's say I made, let me just pull up an eighth note rock beat. And let's say I just made this and I wanted to say eighth note rock beats. I could do the author, like, and if I wanted to put a comment, let's say this was for a student, or it could be for a note for yourself. It could be anything. I could do the BPM that I want to be at, for them to start at. I could put like, try this with a right hand lead versus left hand lead, or just little notes to your students, or if you're using this for yourself to remind yourself of something you maybe wanted to practice with this. That way, when you save this, which that's another thing I wanted to mention, is how to save all these. So if you make a drum beat and you want to save it, I think the easiest way I found is to just do, on most browsers, you can do Command D, or just basically however you want to save it as a bookmark. So for me, it's Command D, and I could just save this, and I could put it under my GrooveScribe file there. And then basically now I have all these beats already saved. And I've been doing this for a while, so I have a lot of stuff. I can come into like genres, go to funk, pull up like a James Brown beat or like Tower Power, and it's going to pull up this beat that I already made. And I could basically, as you can see here, I got This is from the song The Oakland Stroke. If I'm doing a cover of any kind, I'll usually put the band name and then who the drummer is. Of course, this is Dave Garibaldi, awesome funk drummer. And then I do the tempo range. This is kind of where, they play this song on the album. It's about 132, but when they play it live, I think they kind of go between 102 and 132. That's just kind of the general tempo range for this groove. And then I put a note about adding the kick on beat 1 when starting the pattern, but then you don't do that once it loops, so that's why it's not on here. So that's just an example of like what you might put in here. It's a case-by-case basis. It's just going to depend on basically what you're doing in here. And then so, yeah, basically you can just save that like I was just showing you how I just did, and then I can just easily access it again. You could also save the links. You can email the links if you're sharing it with a student or something. You could save them in like your notepad. There's a bunch of ways you could save them, but I think the easiest for me is just making a dedicated bookmark folder and then just have your GrooveScribe beats in there. That way it's just a couple clicks and you're right back to where you were. And then I could still edit this and I could change this and save it again, and then that would save it as a different file, so I'd still have this one. So if like I sent this to a student or a friend, they could edit it however they wanted to. Let's say they wanted to change this up and make a groove that's kind of inspired by this beat. They could edit it and then save it, and then it's not going to affect mine. Mine would still be saved the way it was, and then they could save theirs to be a separate thing. So let's go over just basically making a beat. So let's do clear all here, and I'm just going to get rid of the title and everything on here real quick. All right. And then let's just make a 16th note beat real quick. So basically down here you can click, just literally just click here. It's going to add in the kick. You can see it up here. So let's say I wanted to put a hi-hat pattern that's like 1E and I'm actually just going to make this a 1-bar phrase. So I could click this X to get rid of this second measure. I could hit this plus to bring it back if I wanted to expand this to a 2-bar phrase or make it longer, however long you want to make it. Just remember it's not made to do like a full score like I was saying earlier, so it will kind of start to glitch out more, and you may run it. It will even pop up with a little message that says like, you can't basically go and have too many measures without it getting all screwed up. It is built into the web application, so I think there's only so much it can really handle. It's not like a standalone DAW where it's probably using different computer processing power. I'm not an expert on that stuff, but I would assume that has something to do with that. But basically, to make a beat, you just click stuff on and off in here. It's literally that easy. So if I wanted to make a kick pattern like 1, 2, and 3E, maybe 4 and then the hi-hat, maybe I want to go 1E and 2E and 3E and 4 and so just so you know, you can right-click any of these. And yeah, if you're on a tablet, that's what I was saying earlier, it'll say over here like advanced editing options or something like that. And you just basically click that, and that will give you these same options since I'm on my desktop as this if you right-click. So this gives you other options for different sounds. So let's say I wanted this last, let's say I wanted to open the hi-hat on the of 4 here. I could just hit hi-hat open, and you can see it notated that up here. And it kind of shows you the sound as you click it. And then I could put in the snare. I'm going to do 2, 4. Let's say I wanted a ghost note on the of 2. I could put in a ghost note. You basically have 3 options for snare hits. I could do like a ghost note, and then I'll show you here. I'll put a snare normal so you can kind of hear that. That's like in between a full accent and a ghost note. And it does, as you can see, it gives you cross stick, buzz stroke, flam, some other options. Same with your feet. You could do kick normal, hi-hat foot, or kick and hi-hat with foot. And so let's just give this a listen real quick. All right, so you can hear that, and yeah, let's say I was sending this to a student, or if I was myself just made this and I was like, all right, that's cool, but it's way too fast for me to learn right now. I would just go to my kind of go-to thing, slow it down. I would do this whether you use a GrooveScribe or not. You always want to slow it. If you can't slow it down and break it down, then you can't throw it down, as they say. So slow it way down. You could go down to, it lets you go down to 30. I mean, might be a little excessive, but find it to where it's slow but not too slow, where it kind of still has a little bit of flow to it. It's going to be different for each person and each beat, but I would say usually somewhere in the ballpark of like 50 to 70 BPM. It just kind of depends. I'd usually go maybe start with 60 and see how that sounds. So that's pretty slow. I could maybe crank this down a little bit more. And like I showed you earlier, I could mute stuff. So if I really wanted to just work on my hands, I could just go right click, or actually you don't even have to right click, just click kick, mute kick. So that's that's basically how you make beats in here. And it would be the same thing if I was on a different, if I went to like eighth note triplets and I wanted to make like a shuffle pattern, I could, same kind of thing. It's going to notate it with an eighth note triplet here, as you can see. And then I could, if I wanted to speed that back up, just drag it here, and I could crank that back up to whatever I want. So I think I covered everything I wanted to cover on that. Let me just double check my notes here. Yeah, so let's get into transcribing a drum beat by ear. Let me see what I'm at for time here too. All right, I was going to try to keep this to a half hour, so we're at 26 minutes, so it might go a little bit over half hour. But let's see. So yeah, so essentially, let's clear this out here. I'm going to basically put this back to a 16th note grid and just clear it. So yeah, so that's GrooveScribe. Hopefully I didn't forget anything there, but that's it in a nutshell. And just play around with it. It's pretty easy to learn how to use, honestly. And if you just play around with it for like 10 minutes, you're going to get the gist of it. And then as you start to use it more, it's literally like a no-brainer kind of app. It's not like you're learning a full DAW where it could take you years to really learn the ins and outs of everything it can do. This is like you could learn it in an hour or less, and you're going to basically know what you got to do. So moving on to transcribing beats by ear. This is a tricky thing, and so this is going to be for people that have really never done this. If you've already been doing this for years, you're going to know some of the stuff, and you might have your own process of doing this. But what I used to do before I used GrooveScribe, before this existed, the way most people probably still do it is just do it by hand. Write it out by ear, and that kind of changes as time goes on. Like when you're first starting out, it's kind of very crude process where it might take you a long time to write out even a 1-bar phrase or like 2-bar phrase, let alone a whole song. And so it takes a while. You got to kind of learn the flow of it. And what I found is using a notation grid is I think the easiest way to do this. So if it was, the old-fashioned way, so to speak, it'd basically be like you write on a piece of paper, the subdivisions of the beat that you're trying to write out. So if it's like a 16th note bass beat, I'm going to use a 16th note grid. And I would just jot down on a sheet of paper like the count, 1 E and a, 2 E and a, 3 E and a, 4 E and a. And then I would basically, if it was like a 2-bar phrase I was writing out, or 4-bar, I would just write that out 2 times in a row, 4 times in a row, that kind of thing. And then essentially what you do is that's basically your grid. So you'd basically would be writing this out essentially, and then you'd be filling in much like you are on here. So basically we're going to be doing it on GrooveScribe today because I think it's a superior way to do it, and it's going to be way more helpful because you can just click play and see if you're right. Like if you're trying to write out a beat and you're doing it by hand, you can't just hit play and see if you made a mistake. Especially if you're brand new to this, you may not be totally sure, and you're kind of just sitting there wondering if you have it right, and you have to wait till you talk to your teacher or maybe find somebody that knows about this to check your work. Whereas on here, you get immediate feedback. You can hear it right away, right back, and it's fantastic. So basically, let's kind of go through the process of how this works. So we're going to do a kind of a simple example today, a relatively simple example. Normally, you'd probably be transcribing a drum beat from a song. So you'd be listening to the song, and I would recommend using headphones if you're doing this, because especially on older recordings and just certain mixes, it depends on the type of music, but sometimes it's hard to hear the drums. Like sometimes the kick drum gets kind of muddied up and mixed with the bass, so it's like really hard to hear each individual kick drum hit. But it's especially hard if you're just listening off your phone speaker or like laptop speakers. I would definitely use headphones whenever possible so you can just hear this really in more detail. And the first thing I would do is find the tempo. If you've never done that, it's like if you had a song on, and basically you can do what's called tap tempo. So if I'll just pull up my little tempo app here, and if you can see here, let me move that over there. Down here, it says tap. So if I had a drum beat on, it was like, the beat was boom, boom, ka, boom, boom, ka. I could try to tap with that pulse, the chord note pulse. It's, don't overthink it. It's usually like how you're just tapping your foot to the song. generally, more often than not, that's probably going to be the chord note. So, and this is, I'm talking about 4/4 for all this. It would all apply to other odd time signatures and stuff, but for today, we're just doing 4/4. And so basically, I would, if I had the songs on and the beats, boom, boom, ka, boom, boom, ka, I'd be tapping boom, ka, boom, boom, ka, boom, boom, ka, boom, boom, ka. And it's right about 80, 81, 80, right about there. You could also use an app called Live BPM, which I actually really like. It does cost money. I think it's like $4, and I think it's also only for iOS devices. But this app is really cool because, as you see, I'll beatbox a beat, and it just listens and tells you the BPM in real time. Boom, kappa boom, boom, ka boom, 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 kappa boom, boom, ka, boom, kappa boom, boom, ka boom, 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 ka boom, boom, ka. And you can see it's saying 86. Sometimes it pops up. You saw it said 114 in the beginning. Sometimes it just takes a second to listen, then it will adjust, and it's honestly very accurate. I've actually used that live for a long time as like a kind of a quality control. If you're not playing with a click in a band, you can mount this. I mount this on my hi-hat, and then I can kind of keep tabs of the tempo throughout the set, but I'm not actually hearing an audible click. I'm just seeing it. So that's a great tool for stuff like that. And also, in this context, just getting the tempo of a song really quickly, it's great for that as well. So once you find the tempo, let's do it for the beat that we're gonna transcribe right now. So I have this beat right here. I'll hit play so you can hear it. Oh, just 1 second here. Let me change the audio on this. All right, hopefully that's coming through here. So I'm assuming that most of you probably don't have live BPM, but anybody, whether you have a metronome or not already, you can just look on the App Store. Just look for like free metronome. There's a ton of them. And so whatever one you have, it should have, I would say probably every metronome nowadays is going to have a tap tempo feature. It'll literally just say tap, like as you can see, if this camera adjusts here. Okay, there we go. You can just see tap down over here on the bottom. If you can see that, just says tap. So you just tap right over that. So let's get the tempo for this. So it's 80 BPM. So I'm going to go back to GrooveScribe, and that would be the first thing I'm going to do is just put the tempo to 80 BPM. And then the second thing I'm going to do is I want to have the count in here. So just like you would write it down if you're writing this, handwriting it the old way, instead of doing that, I'm just going to go here and just do counts. So now I have my count there. This is my grid, and my grid with the count right down here. And so everybody you'll probably start to develop your own process of doing this, but the way I like to do it is to start with the obvious notes. Like, so if it's a drum beat, like say this drum beat here that we were just listening to. One, two, three, four. 1, 2, 3, 4. So we can see that this beat is actually a 2-bar phrase. So I'm going to actually click this to make that 2 bars now. And then the next thing that I'm listening for is, you can really do this in any order, but I'm going to start with the kick drum. So let's listen here. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4. So there's a kick on 1 there, so I'm going to fill that in. And I'm hearing 1, 2, and. And then, sorry, get distracted here. Just 1 second here. All right, and so we'll keep moving through with the kick here, but just to point out too, you can skip some of these steps as you get better. Like you might be able to skip this entirely, just basically hand write it out, or just fill in the grid as you get more experience. You could just kind of go through. You might not have to go like just kicks, just snare, but it's a very useful thing, and it just depends on how complex the beat is and stuff like that. But for this one, let's keep going through here. So we had 1, 2, and then the next one I think, and 3, and then E of 4. And there, and then it's 3 E and then E of 4. So I think that, let me just stop that for a second. I think we got our kick pattern there. I think that sounds right. So let's now focus on the snare. So let's play this again. 1, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. 1 on 2 there. There's a snare hit on the E of 3 and 4. And then just 2 and 4. So that's our snare, and then let's listen to the hi-hat. It starts with tut, 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 1 E and. And then the rest is just straight 8th notes there. So let's fill those in. And let me just stop this in Ableton. Alright, let's see what we got here. So we're getting closer. I think this is kind of the stage 2 here would be to like start to adjust the dynamics and, you know, things like open hi-hats and kind of finalize the little, you know, bells and whistles of the beat, so to speak. So it sounds to me like the hi-hat is basically being accented on the downbeat. So what I'm going to do is put that in here. So I can right-click, and I can hit hi-hat accent. And I'm gonna, the downbeats, remember, that's 1, 2, 3, 4. And so I'm going to accent 1, 2, 3, 4 going across each measure here. So let's do that real quick. And I do think it's easier to do this as the second step, so you can kind of just, don't worry about getting all this ironed out when you're first doing it. Just lay out the kind of, you know, the main groove, just where the notes are placed. And then, and if you were handwriting this, it's the same kind of thing. Just don't worry about like the proper notation. This is like your rough draft, so to speak. And then you're going to rewrite it with the proper notation if you're handwriting it. If you're using GrooveScribe, it's basically writing it for you with proper notation as you go, which is kind of nice. So, you know, that's why I like this. It really just shows you how it's supposed to be written out, because if you're brand new to this, you may not realize that you're not supposed to connect, like, you know, more than 4 8th notes together, or like things like that, or like you may just make some notation errors as far as like having it not really written out properly. So this does that for you. So let's get back to this hi-hat here before I get distracted. So I'm going to put in the last accent here, and then it sounded like there's an open hi-hat here. So now let's see what we get. All right, so that's getting better. And then I think, you know, this snare hit here on the beat was definitely quieter, so let's bring that down to a ghost note. And then, you know, this is where GrooveScribe has some limitations. Like if you had like some kick accents in a drum beat, which a lot of drum beats would, you can't do that on here. It's basically the kick volume is just a static, same volume. You can't like lower. If you're playing like a jazz groove and you wanted to feather the bass drum or something, you can't just bring the dynamics of the bass down. So once again, it's a free web app, so it's gonna get you most of the way. And then if you really want to write out a beat and have it sound exactly the way it was, I would get into using like a DAW, like GarageBand, Logic, Ableton. Then you could really edit it more freely, however you want. But for I'm telling you, for like learning drum beats, the feature of slowing stuff down is fantastic. Learning how to sight read, this is fantastic. You know, all the metronome, like the solo feature, the rotating through the E's and Ahs and ands, all the different subdivisions, all those are fantastic features. So I think anybody can find some use for this, but I just wanted to go over today kind of what GrooveScribe's about, and then kind of show you just my process of like transcribing a drum beat by ear. And you know, this beat, this would be, I wouldn't start with this drum, a beat like this if you're just starting out. You know, work with your teacher. You probably start with something a little bit easier. I mean, this isn't too hard, but it's like, would probably be a little overwhelming if this was your first drum beat. But I just wanted to show this process for, you know, just like this general audience. So if you have some experience, it won't be like just an 8th note rock beat. But it would be the same process, whether it's a super beginner, easy beat, or a complex one. Basically, as a recap, just listen for each individual part of the drum set. I think is the easiest way until you get more experience, and you can maybe skip that step. But even if you are experienced, I usually do a mix of like just going beat by beat. So I might just write out this all at once. This right here, I might just fill all this in one go, or I might just do like the kick drum. And you know, the nice thing about starting with one at a time, and like especially the obvious drum hits, like it helps you kind of narrow stuff down. So if like, you know, let's say you had let's say you have this kick drum on 1, and then you know the snares on 2, and they're pretty obvious. It's just 1, 2. It's where they are in a lot of drum beats, and probably what you're used to as a beginner too. So you would kind of be able to, if you weren't sure where this kick drum hit was, it would sort of help you narrow it down, because you could plug in the kick snare here, and then you know this kick is coming before the snare, so you really have 3 options. And you could just go through all. The great thing about this is I could go through all 3 and say like, well, how does it sound if I put it here? And be like, that's not it. What about here? Is it the and? Nope. So then I know now it's boom, boom, cut, 1, 2. And that's how I could kind of narrow that down and start to do this. So hopefully this helps. I'm going to probably leave it at that for this video. I don't want to make it too long. I know we're probably, where are we at here? We're a little bit over 41 minutes. So hopefully you guys stuck through with me on this one. If you're just, you know, starting to use GrooveScribe, I hope you find it useful, whether you're a student or a teacher. And then if you're starting to transcribe beats by ear, consider using this as a tool to do it. I think it's probably one of the best out there that's free and easy to use. So check it out. Good luck, and I'll see you next time. Take care, everybody.